Go yonder, and gather the people. Tell all the people that peace is come. Tell all the refugees they will find home again. Tell all the people that peace is come. Go yonder. Tell all the people that peace is come. Tell all the nations their weapons are needed. Tell all the people that peace is come. Go yonder. Tell all the people that peace is come. Tell all the children their hunger is over. Tell all the people that peace is come. Go yonder, and gather the people. Tell all the people that peace is come. Tell all the refugees they are welcome here. Tell all the people that justice will come. We're gonna sit at the welcome table. We're gonna sit at the welcome table one of these days. Hallelujah. We're gonna sit at the welcome table. Gonna sit at the welcome table one of these days. All kinds of people around that table. All kinds of people around that table one of these days. Hallelujah. All kinds of people around that table. Gonna sit at the welcome table one of these days. No fancy style at the welcome table. No fancy style at the welcome table one of these days. Hallelujah. No fancy style at the welcome table. Gonna sit at the welcome table one of these days. We're gonna keep our civil rights. We're gonna keep our civil rights one of these days. Hallelujah. We're gonna keep our civil rights. Gonna sit at the welcome table one of these days. We're gonna sing and never get tired. We're gonna sing and never get tired one of these days. Hallelujah. We're gonna sing and never get tired. Gonna sit at the welcome table one of these days. How are we doing? Thank you for clapping along with me. That helps. There is more love somewhere. There is more love somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more love somewhere.
Well, welcome, everyone. I'm Lori Kigner, and I've partnered with Dana Boyle to pull this gathering together. Hello. I'm Lori Kigner. I've partnered with Dana Boyle and many, many others to put this gathering together, and I am so very grateful that each one of you is here today to share in this celebration. And in this process, I was searching for church-related photos in my mobile phone digital files going back year by year until in 2011, which is not that long ago. I clicked on a Day of the Dead photo I'd taken, and I found its resolution to be dismal. So I laughed, and I remembered the low quality of early phone cameras, and I stopped searching phone files, realizing I needed to look at camera files. And then I would actually need to find my envelopes of printed photos. You know, 20 years ago, we were probably listening to beepers going off during the service, not phones, because phones were attached to walls. So then I wandered forward through my memories from 1999, traveling through chalice generations, from utilitarian chalices that we once used to the beautiful ceramic chalice made by Will Swanson, and then to this beautiful chalice designed and created by Kate Christopher with the help of hands, literally, from the congregation. A child's hands, a woman's hands, and a man's hands. You can see them holding the base of the chalice. The chalice stand was created by Jerry Yans. Fabrics from members including Ann Dahlstrom, Doris Petrie, and Xana Martin adorn our sanctuary. And our sanctuary is gifted with wood from the trees that once lived in the space in which we now sit. And these are but a very few mentions of a very few of the offerings to our beloved community from our beloved community. I could additionally note the pews and the chairs in which you are sitting, the roof that protects us, the HVAC that warms us. Every aspect of what we have here was created by everyone who is here and by the many, many others who were not able to be here today. Every aspect of what we have here was also influenced by the leadership and guidance of Reverend Victoria Safford for the last 20 years. This is what we are here today to celebrate, our beloved community, which was made possible in no small measure by our beloved minister. We have been nurtured and shaped, comforted and encouraged. We have learned and we continue to learn to open our eyes and our minds and our hearts ever and ever more widely. We learn from and with each other, and we learn from and with Victoria. I light the chalice with deep gratitude for these 20 years with Victoria. And I'm grateful to introduce Nicolay Lyon and Dick Rogers, who will lead us through our gathering. Nicolay and Dick have each been members of WBUUC for many years and have participated in this community in many and varied ways.
Ladies and gentlefolks, welcome to our celebration. We are pleased to solemnize Victoria Safford's 20 years amongst our congregation with a suitably sober and pious commemoration. This event will have all the hallmarks of a proper UU occasion: laughter, poetry, songs, coffee, and everyone trying to remember all of the words to Spirit of Life. Dick Rogers and I have the privilege of welcoming our guest of honor and her long-suffering, patient, and no doubt sometimes rightfully exasperated with us entourage. Ross, Hope, and recently Joanna support and bolster Victoria so that she can do her ministry. Truly, the force is strong in the Safford family.
Before we dive in, I want to share this advisory from concerned citizen Steve Goranson. Let me do you all a big favor, he writes. You'll thank me later. Turn off your phones. Right now. Silence them if you can't commit totally, but trust me, if you start to buzz, I know someone who can sense it from 50 paces. We don't often see Victoria upset or angry, but if you've witnessed the Safford side eye when the phone rings during the service, you know the risk you run. Do it now. Today's program is going to be simple and not very long. We'll hear voices of appreciation, including excerpts from writings that you all have offered for Victoria's scrapbook. We'll lift our voices together in a few of Victoria's favorite songs, and then we'll adjourn for the bulk of the time to commune in the social hall, where you all each have the chance to voice your appreciation and thanks for our beloved minister. However, as a fellow introvert, I can pretty safely predict that our attentions will exhaust Victoria well before, but the hope is to wrap up by about 5 o'clock this afternoon. So, in the receiving line, make your compliments pithy. Limit one per customer. When the organizers of this celebration asked me to join Nicolay in saying a few words from the heart, they had two instructions: be brief, and try not to focus too much on Victoria. And I have the theme from Mission Impossible playing in the back of my head. But I do understand the focus thing. Victoria prefers not to be the center of attention. She is the most genuinely humble person I know, with abundant reasons to be anything but. She is quicker to deflect a compliment and reposition the spotlight than a Unitarian is to quibble with the text of a hymn. In deference to that humble preference, I'm going to talk instead about me. Well, me and my family. By way of coloring in one small corner of the canvas that is her 20 years here. My mother, Marilyn Hannah Rogers, was a member of this congregation before Victoria arrived. It was partly Marilyn's urging that prompted my church-shopping middle school daughter, Ellie, and my wife, Mary, to check it out. The first service that they attended in 1999 was the very first one that Victoria preached as the called minister here. Marilyn became a fan immediately. Ellie and Mary became regulars, and Mary soon joined the church. It took me a couple more years to come around because male. But ensuing years tried us. I underwent urgent open heart surgery. Victoria sat with my family while I lay in recovery. Marilyn contracted pancreatic cancer. Victoria was at her side when she died. And she crafted a memorial service whose words of consolation I still treasure. In later years, Victoria led memorials for my father, Mary's mother, my brother, our nephew. But there weren't only endings. In 2017, Victoria officiated at the wedding of daughter Ellie to Lewis by the banks of the St. Croix River. And just last November 3rd, Victoria was able to announce in the second service that Ellie and Lewis had just given birth to Rose Hannah McLaughlin, our first grandchild, our fourth generation here at WBUUC. I happily imagine the Sunday when Victoria will settle little Rosie on her hip up here, bestow on her the thornless rose of dedication, and recite the beautiful words that will welcome her into the care of this congregation. Words that Victoria wrote, of course. Reflect on that for just a moment. In 20 years, Victoria has touched our family in illness and fear, loss and grief, union and joy, and now birth and hope. And we're just one family, one among hundreds, maybe thousands, that have passed through these doors. If I asked each of you to rise, if you too have been similarly touched, consoled, counseled, celebrated, we'd have a standing ovation in no time. But my instructions are to be brief and not focus too much on Victoria. All I've recounted so far comes merely from the pastoral care portion of Victoria's portfolio. Being a pastor entails much more, of course. As she's reminded us, pastor is Latin for shepherd, and Victoria deserves particular gratitude for shepherding in a denomination with an overabundance of black sheep. In the sacred hour of Sunday worship here, this shepherd has consistently led us to metaphorical green pastures beside still waters. I've long since lost count of the Sundays I departed with my soul restored. But at the same time, this pastor has never hesitated to loose the border collies of conscience, to nip at our moral flanks and herd us back into the paths of righteousness, helping us to begin again becoming who we are called to be. I could ask you to stand if in worship here you've ever been comforted or inspired or chastened or gladdened or teared up unexpectedly or felt called to awe or mercy or compassion or resolve. If I did, we'd have a standing ovation in no time. But my instructions are to be brief and not focus on Victoria too much. Having worked with her on the board years ago, I want from that perspective to briefly examine another Latin word, arator, or cultivator. When Mary and Ellie attended that first service in 1999, this church had about 100 members. In those days, the lone minister pretty much did it all, even setting up chairs and tidying hymnals before the service, if you can believe it. WBUUC is now home to something like 750 members and 100 more friends who are not joiners. For many of us, it was Victoria's prophetic voice in the pulpit that brought us here. But how came the doors to open ever wider for so many? How have welcome and inclusion come to be foundational values? How has participation become an ethos? And opportunities for service and growth abounded for any and all who wish to be a part. As our chief executive, Victoria has led transformations in governance, in staffing and staff development, in ministerial formation, in volunteer recruitment, training and motivation, in financial stability. And, oh yeah, this beautiful space got built. Not by Victoria alone, not at all. But not from scratch. But she has been the arator, the cultivator, whose tireless, intentional fidelity to a vision of what this covenanted community can be has guided all the good efforts of so many over 20 years. I know that if I were to ask you each to stand, if you felt welcomed here, or really seen for the first time, or found fellowship, or served and grown beyond yourself because of your service, we'd have a standing ovation in no time. But my instructions are to be brief and not focus too much on Victoria. So, back to me then. I had a milestone birthday this week. Let's just say I now qualify for the senior citizen discount everywhere. I guess that's why, as an elder, I've been given the honor of retrospection, reflecting briefly on the monumental accomplishment of a noble calling, vigorously and gracefully answered for more than 20 years. The mighty drive to lessen the tides of human sorrow, the massive addition to the sum of human happiness. But perhaps the lasting legacy of Victoria's work, which Nicolay will speak about in just a moment, lies not only in what having Victoria for our pastor has meant to each of us, but in what it means today to those beyond these doors, who we now touch differently because of who we have become here, and what it will mean tomorrow to all those who will come after in our care. We celebrate 20 years, but I'll close with a request from the future, from granddaughter Rosie. At 3 months, only close relatives can currently understand what she wants some of the time. But I'm pretty sure she says, I hope that Reverend Safford will continue to grace this house and our lives for a long time. Amen.
Dick has spoken eloquently about how Victoria provides pastoral care, amazing Sunday services, and gifted institutional guidance to our congregation. She and we have grown together these past 20 years. As Victoria has learned to shepherd a large congregation, so has the congregation been transformed by Victoria's call to take our courage, our compassion, and even our reverence beyond the practical Arctic entry at our front door of our recently expanded sanctuary. I speak of the work of our congregation here because our nation knows all too well now the danger of the cult of personality. To me, the finest quality that Victoria displays as our lead minister is to empower and encourage us to take the work that is ours into the world. Victoria has shown us that it takes moral and spiritual courage to confront white supremacy in our community and in our own hearts. Victoria facilitates facing race conversations, but she can't force a change of heart on anyone. You do that. We do that. Victoria advocated for bringing Miriam and her family into sanctuary here, but she couldn't do it alone. Dozens of you provided money, time, and risked the threat of legal action based on the courage of your convictions. We do it together. Victoria has shown us that deep compassion is both a necessary and a spiritual discipline. Victoria encourages us to welcome families experiencing homelessness into our church every September as part of Project Home. But she doesn't do it in a vacuum. Countless more volunteers make food and stay overnight with our guests. They are broken open in the best way and in the hardest way, face to face. We do it together. Victoria has shown us that reverence for that which is important is central to our faith as Unitarians. Time and again, Victoria has challenged us to shave and whittle the extraneous so that we can focus on what matters. Our congregation has taken action on climate change and human rights based on her exhortations. Together, we have accomplished work Victoria never could have done by herself. Victoria encouraged me in my efforts last year to travel to the border and perform legal civil rights work on behalf of children detained by Customs and Border Patrol. I would not have been able to do it without her encouragement and the support of this community. We all do the work together. Through many dangers, toils, and snares, we have already come. And when we fall short, or fall over, or fall down, as we so often do, we pick each other up together. And so, in the manner of a Victoria sermon, as the poet says, ministry is that quality of being in community that affirms human dignity, beckons forth hidden possibilities, invites us into deeper, more constant, reverent relationships, and carries forward our heritage of hope and liberation. Ministry is what we do together as we celebrate triumphs of our human spirit, miracles of birth and life, wonders of devotion and sacrifice. Ministry is what we do together with one another in terror and torment, in grief, in misery and pain, enabling us in the presence of death to say yes to life. We who minister speak and live the best we know with full knowledge that it is never quite enough, and yet are reassured by lostness found, fragments reunited, wounds healed, and joy shared. Ministry is what we all do together. I am so glad Victoria continues to minister together with us. Long may she reign. Over the last few months, comments regarding Victoria and this community have been gathered so that Victoria might bask in our words of appreciation. Russell Rogers, Deborah DeBrew, and Margot Berg will now share some excerpts of these submissions. All of the submissions have been compiled in a scrapbook for Victoria that you can view later in the social hall.
Can you hear me now? Good afternoon. I've been here 2 years, so I need to make it clear these are not my words. These are what were compiled by your contributions. As a ministerial search committee of 20 years ago, we knew on first hearing Victoria speak that we had found treasure. Even with the strong lay leadership noted in our search booklet, we knew well that a minister is central to the spirit, character, and growth of any church. We knew immediately that she was a leader who could not only carry our vision forward, but enhance that vision in ways as of then not yet clear. Our congregation remains warm, energetic, and committed, even as it has grown immensely. In addition, we've seen a gradual and remarkable deepening of both our spirituality and our commitment to social justice. With the poetic elegance and moral fervor of her sermons, Victoria speaks to the depths of our being, about our beautiful yet challenging gift of life, and about our responsibility to help create a fuller life for those less fortunate than we are. Most recently, she calls us to hope, resilience, and courage in a very troubled time.
Victoria's impact is like that of a stone being cast into a pond and the ripples go outward. Her message is one that I desperately need to hear and was not even aware of it. Her message has inspired me to take action, to work toward peace and unity, to try to make things right in my neighborhood, to stand up and make my voice heard against hate and ignorance. I am constantly amazed that she never seems to run out of fantastic inspirational readings which complement her message. I am truly amazed that I am finding myself a member of this congregation, as when I came to this church, I was very cynical towards organized religion. I have come to find I was very much in need of a spiritual home, but was not aware because I had neglected that part of myself for so long. I look forward to Sunday and attending service as it helps to center my life and thoughts. It helps me to go out and meet the world and not be beaten down by the bad things that are happening. I also know that for at least some time each week, I will be in the company of thinking, caring people who actually live their faith.
In order to teach music students the importance of the 1-5-1 chord progression, we sometimes play a folk song or traditional hymn. For example, "Shall we gather at the river?" Only playing the tonic chord, the 1. When you get to the part, "Where bright angel feet have trod," you don't change the chord. You just keep playing. You keep playing the chord you started on, and it sounds wrong. It sounds empty, static, with no place to go and no place to come home to. Without the community, this beloved community of WBUUC, my world would be missing that very important chord. I would not feel loved like I feel now, just for who I am. I would not have become the leader I am now, always with more to learn. I wouldn't have had a place to grow into and through the beautiful and varied music that is part of the fabric of this church. Most importantly, I wouldn't be surrounded by such a loving, reflective, and dynamic group of people
These are the people, with Victoria usually, but not always at the lead, who make the song move forward, fill it with life, and always make it want to come back home.
Just how does our minister craft a sermon? Weaving words, creating poetic images, telling allegories and parables, balancing humor and pathos, mixing earthly actions with lofty ideals, revealing personal experiences and universal truths, quoting other voices, calling on history, imagining the future, centering the present. Sunday upon Sunday, Reverend Victoria astonishes us with her wisdom, generously offered from the pulpit. Her spoken words reach her listeners as music does, opening hearts. Music, a mysterious language of souls, wraps around our worship. Week after week, we members and visitors offer each other our attention, wisdom, humor, and affection. We come to church to inspire, be inspired, and carry inspiration home.
When I became a mother and started to fight the cultural influences that pulled my children toward greed and callousness, I realized that I needed some help. I searched for a group of curiarchy-smashing people who preferred to commune with cookies and nature rather than holy bread and wine. I'm so grateful that I found WBUUC. I came back to church to benefit my children, but I stay because of what this place offers me as well. Your sermons are persuasive, Victoria. Did you ever hear the legendary tale of Babe Ruth, who once got up to bat, pointed to the seats behind the outfield, and then proceeded to hit a home run ball to those seats? That reminds me of you, stepping up to the pulpit, glancing at your notes, and then proceeding to hit it out of the park as we sit in astonishment at your poetic vision.
Tempted by the trove of progressive voters that our congregation represented, one winter Sunday just prior to the 2004 presidential precinct caucuses, I showed up at church to campaign. I was wearing a Victorian costume and sported a suffragette-style sash with my candidate's name. My sidekick wielded a scary witch puppet. I'm not sure what we were trying to get across. 2 minutes into our ill-conceived demonstration, Victoria emerged on the icy walk and with calm urgency told us we couldn't do that, which I probably knew anyway. We were stopped, but we weren't squashed. This church has a talent for dealing responsibly with harebrained ideas. 20 years ago, I was often confused about how our congregation straddled the secular and the spiritual. Victoria's leadership has helped us as a community and me as an individual navigate this distinction. This is not a place where anything goes, but it is an amplification chamber for the best within each of us. When I am most annoyed, and when I am most annoying, this community is a safe place to be. Victoria's 2 decades of leadership have helped us create it together.
I think of WBUUC as temenos, a holy place with a protected center. The term derives from the ancient idea of a god or spirit inhabiting a particular place.
Over the years, I have become convinced that WBUUC is a community that has justice, love, acceptance, exploration, reverence for nature at its core. And Victoria, you are the best of all guides. Your talks on Sundays are an excellent blend of helping us to see and understand what is happening in the world, delivered with the utmost respect and compassion. At times you express outrage, necessary to mobilize us and shift us out of our complacency. and then you offer guidance about how we might see our responsibility to respond. I leave every time wanting to be my best person, yet knowing that the most helpful responses I can make to the world will be based on who I am and who I am uniquely called to be. You also create a large place for awe and the honoring of nature, our place in the cosmos, how we are all interconnected. These are core beliefs for me. I know that our lives are in a rich circle where we are interdependent and part of a larger whole. Victoria, you have shown us how to hold all that life has to offer, its joys, pain, injustice, the creative work that we can do, acceptance of and compassion for all people, the necessity of waking up, the exquisite offerings and rhythm of nature, the honoring of ourselves and our gifts, the embrace of community.
Through your sincerely humble stewardship, WBUUC has grown from a relatively ragtag cohort of dedicated, like-minded congregates to a loving, inclusive, committed community with a solid foundation for the future. WBUUC reaches out beyond this beautiful building and woods to the wider world and deep into the souls of our members and guests. You have accomplished this. With a steady hand and loving heart, you have called us to serve, to create, execute, and support a clear vision and mission. You have gifted us with a quality of scholarship, writing, speaking, and thinking that is an astonishing gift. Idea after idea, week after week, and now decade after decade. You have given us your best, your beautiful self, your commitment, your excellence, your family.
One can hardly celebrate Victoria Safford in this space and not include some of her words, which even more than these windows or this wood have made it a holy place. In an interview with On Being host Krista Tippett a few years ago, the renowned writer, educator, and spiritual visionary Parker Palmer said, "Of all the virtues, hope is one of the most needed in our time. When people ask me how I stay hopeful in an era of widespread darkness, I answer simply, hope keeps me alive and creatively engaged with the world." Here, he said, is one of my favorite quotes on the nature of hope by a fine writer named Victoria Safford. This is Parker Palmer reading from Gates of Hope.
Hope by Victoria Safford. Our mission is to plant ourselves at the gates of hope, not the prudent gates of optimism, which are somewhat narrower, nor the stalwart, boring gates of common sense, nor the strident gates of self-righteousness, which creak on shrill and angry hinges, nor the cheerful, flimsy garden gate of everything is going to be all right, but a very different, sometimes very lonely place, the place of truth-telling about your own soul, first of all, and its condition, the place of resistance and defiance, the piece of ground from which you see the world both as it is and as it could be, as it might be, as it will be, the place from which you glimpse not only struggle, but joy in the struggle. And we stand there, all of us, beckoning and calling, telling people what we are seeing, asking people what they see.
So we are going to sing together again, and we are going to attempt to make the circle with as many of us as possible, all the way around.
For all We close with these words from Allen Ginsberg. You who saw it all, or saw flashes and fragments, take from us some example. Try and get yourselves together. Clean up your act. Find your community. Pick up on some kind of redemption on your own consciousness. Become mindful of your own friends, your own work, your own proper meditation, your own art, your own beauty. Go out and make it for your own eternity. So be it. See to it. Thanks to everyone for your participation in this service and celebration. And let us now gather in the social hall.